Oh, that one's cutting in and out. We tried changing the batteries in that one. You can try that.
No.
No. Please stand by. We're having technical difficulty. Okay. Is it working now?
Oh, there we go. There we go. Good evening, folks. We're gonna go ahead and get started. We are just a little bit after 5:30. But we're gonna get going by inviting the MRGCD staff up here. This is not a normal meeting of any board or anything like that, so we're not gonna do any minutes of those kinds of things. So we're just gonna kind of jump right in. So MRGCD staff, if you can come up here, I got a lot of staff in the room. Inevitably, there will be follow-up questions. Staff will be available for different parts of the conversation. So I'm gonna let them introduce themselves. While they're making their way up here, I would like to introduce and let them introduce themselves. I have 3 board members here present, and I do believe our chair, Stephanie Russo-Baca, is at home with a little one, but she is attending virtually. So I will let our board members introduce themselves first, and then we will work our way down the way to staff.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for coming out. My name is John Kelly. I'm one of the board members from Bernalillo County. My background is in civil engineering. I used to run the Flood Control Authority in Albuquerque for most of a career. I thought I knew a lot about water until I got to the MRGCD, and I learned a whole bunch more. So thanks for coming out tonight, and we've got a good presentation with our engineer Wilson and Company on where we're at on the project, and then Jason will fill you in on some of the peripheral details.
And I actually think these mics are live, correct?
I can turn them up.
Oh, that's okay. They can just
Hear me? No. Good evening, everybody. My name is Michael T. Sandoval. I'm also one of the directors on the board, and I represent Sandoval County. I currently reside on the Pueblo of San Felipe. So my background is a water resources specialist and civil engineering too.
Hello, everyone. It's really awesome to be here and see everyone. My name is Colin Baum, I'm the newest board director. I'm Bernalillo County, position number 4. I got appointed by the board to take Joaquin Baca's remaining term. So excited to be here. I'm happy that everyone showed up, and yeah, this is a great turnout.
Good evening. I'm Tara Jaramillo. I'm the executive assistant for the MRGCD and the IPRA records specialist.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Amanda Molina. I'm the Public Information Officer at the Middle Rio Grande Conservancy District. I will be here all meeting and after. If any of you would like to pull me aside and talk a little bit about the ways you like to receive communication, I am learning and want to make sure you're getting all the information and news that we have to share. So please do visit with me after.
Evening, everybody. My name is Casey Ish. I'm the Conservation Program Supervisor for MRGCD, and I'll be floating around in the back. So if anyone has any questions about some of the programs or things we offer, feel free to get a hold of me. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Matthew Chavez. I'm part of the Engineering and Mapping Department here at the MRGCD. If you have any questions about the Engineering Department, I can help out as well. But I'll be sitting in the back as well. Thank you.
Good evening, Eric Zamora. I'm the Chief Operations Officer for the district, and I oversee basically the maintenance functions for the district.
Glenn Slover, Wilson and Company. So kind of project manager on this, but.
Luke Smith, I'm with Wilson and Company as well. I am one of the design engineers working on this job.
And Dan Aguirre, and I'm also the principal in charge at Wilson and Company.
And again, my name is Jason Kasuga. I am the chief engineer and CEO for the Middle Rio Grande Conservancy District. Thank you, team. Appreciate you. Real quick, I think everybody knows where the facilities are. Thank you to Corrales. I see the mayor in the back. I've talked to some of the counselors. Thank you for allowing us to use your facility. Again, I know this will be a topic near and dear to the community's heart, and I can see that by the turnout. So we appreciate that. Thank you to some of the constituents who came to our board meetings and regularly talk about this topic. It was some of that feedback that actually was able to get this meeting specifically organized outside of a normal Village of Corrales meeting, but one just focused on this topic. So thank you to you. I see several of you in the room. This is a direct follow-up to that request. So thank you to you for coming. And it's important that folks show up to our board meetings. We do try to react to the information that we hear. So thank you for that. So I'm going to put up the start of our presentation if I can. We're going to talk about what we hope to be the goals. Can you just go to the second slide when you get that up? So the outline of what we're going to try to do tonight, we're going to talk about, so the goal of tonight is to talk specifically about the Corrales Siphon project itself. MRGCD is doing a series of meetings throughout the valley. Right now, you may or may not see a flyer like this. You may or may have seen a flyer like this. We are doing county-specific irrigation and farmers meetings updates. We did some of those meetings before the start of irrigation season. We're doing now that we're into irrigation season. So that'll be a pattern that we continue. This meeting though is separate from that. So you'll see advertisements for a Sandoval County farmers and irrigators meeting. And the point of doing this is to make sure that meeting doesn't just get dominated by one of the big topics in Sandoval County right now, which is Corrales Siphon. So the next one that we have on our schedule is actually Thursday, June 20th. It's the Bernalillo County. That may be relevant to some of our irrigators that I see over in this direction who are actually irrigate off from water that comes from the siphon, but actually reside within the city of Albuquerque. So the goal tonight is we're going to talk about project timeline. We're going to kind of do a little bit of, we have enough people in the room. It's worthwhile for us to do a little bit of history, go back and talk about what started all this, at least since my time at the MRGCD. We're going to talk a little bit about funding details. There's been some questions and public comment given at our board meetings that cloud the issue of how and when and what funding MRGCD is doing this project under, how we got it. So our goal is to kind of clarify that conversation too. How long we've had the funding, our actions that we've taken since we've gotten the funding. We want to clean up that conversation a little bit. Then we'll get specifically into where we are in the design process and provide design updates. That is specifically Wilson and Company will be going into that. That process is going well as the cliff notes to that conversation to come. And then I will get back up here and I will talk about agency coordination. There's obviously some updates on that some of the community members may or may not know or understand. And so when we get through kind of the technical pieces of this, I will come back up here and I will talk about the agency to agency coordination that MRGCD is doing with the Bureau of Indian Affairs and the Pueblo of Sandia. So with that, I think, Luke, am I giving this to you? I will hand the mic over to Luke and we will get started through the presentation proper.
All right. Jason, before you start, could we invite 6 people from outside to sit up here in a comfortable chair?
So folks in the back, we do have, if you ever wanted to sit in a counselor seat, you won't be on camera because the camera is not facing them today. I don't think you will. So if you would like a comfortable seat, we got some more. Great. John, thank you for that. Yeah, folks, we have some more in the front seat right here. Our consultant staff gave up their seats if folks need a seat here in the front. All right, sir. Yep, there's one more right there. And Luke, I'll turn the mic over to you. All right.
All right. Good evening, everyone. So what we'll kind of do first here, as he went over, I'm going to go over this this project timeline and how the project came about. So in late 2021, MRGCD discovered a sinkhole that had appeared along the alignment of the Corrales siphon. With this sinkhole, MRGCD did a condition assessment of the siphon, which basically involved them running cameras through the siphon to see if there were any detrimental features through the siphon from one side of the river to the other. When they did this, they found out that there were some wood stave pieces throughout the pipe that had come out of the pipe and made it inoperable in the future. So with all of that happening, they got with us and had us perform a alternative analysis to replace the siphon, to identify if there were options to either repair that siphon in its existing state, or to go through a replacement option for the siphon. When we went through that process of identifying whether a replacement or a repair was more feasible, we ended up with a preferred option that was replacing the siphon with a new siphon. And the installation process for that siphon, the preferred installation process became a trenchless design that would allow us to bore under the river to the other side of the river without having to trench or do any construction in the footprint of the river. Once we had this preferred alternative and a construction cost for this alternative, or an estimated construction cost for this alternative, we worked with MRGCD to help them apply for Water Trust Board funding to complete a design and construction of this alternative. And that was that application for funding was completed in December of 2022. In May of 2023, we got information from the Water Trust Board that they had approved the project funding, and they were working through the steps to get the funding dispersed to MRGCD, or I guess contracted to MRGCD. And by November of last year, November of 2023, that funding agreement was finally signed by all parties and in effect. So since November of 2023, we have been working through the design process on that funding to get a trenchless siphon designed for and ready for construction. All right, so I guess just some information on what that funding is and how it kind of got splitted out. So when we received the funding, the final funding amount that was received from Water Trust Board is well, I guess not received from them. The final total funding amount is $8.5 million. Of that $8.5 million, about 700,000 is a loaned amount from the Water Trust Board that is to be paid back, and about 1.5 million of it is MRGCD's money to match the funding source so that they can get funding from the Water Trust Board. All right, so I guess here's just an update of where we are at in design. We'll have kind of a more detailed I'll go into a little bit more detail on this on the next slide, but I guess this is where we're at today. So we are working through the design right now. With our current schedule, we're planning to have everything ready for bid in August of 2024, barring any outside issues. In September of 2024, we basically a month after we put it out to bid, we would have a bid opening and we would present it to the board for acceptance to go to construction. The construction process right now, we're expecting it to take approximately 1 year. There is some fluctuation in that just because the specialized nature of boring under the river. There aren't many contractors in the state of New Mexico that can complete that work. So there is some expectation that it may take 2 to 3 months to get a contractor on site to start doing that work after they've bidded the project. There will be some construction work that would go on in the meantime, potentially while we're waiting for the actual boring contractor. But I guess that's kind of where the 1-year duration is right now. We do have that kind of flex in the schedule. And with this, we would plan to have the siphon fully operational by March of 2026. So I guess just generally, I know I did already kind of go over what the preferred alternative was in a general sense, but I guess what the actual process that's going through to allow for a trenchless design is a horizontal directional drilling that will bore under the river to the other side without doing any construction in the river. We'll just do construction in the canal on each canal side area, and the bore will drive from the east side of the river, or from the west side of the river to the east side of the river, and then the pipe will be pulled back through to the east side of the river in stages that make the borehole larger and larger. In terms of where the project is at and some of the delays that we have seen on our end, the biggest delay we've seen is coordination. We've had to coordinate with the Sandia Pueblo to get access to their site to do geotechnical analysis and geotechnical tests for the boring analysis report. So we had to do borings on both sides of the river to get enough data to feel confident with the borehole properties so that we could do a bore under the river and we would know what size that bore could be before potential tunnel collapse. Basically, that kind of helps us understand what size of pipe we can put through the river and whether or not multiple pipes would be needed to push the flow required through this siphon. And with that, so the geotechnical work, we originally were planning to get them out there around November, December to do the borings. Through coordination with the Sandia Pueblo, we got held up and were not able to get them out there until about the end of February. So there was about 3 to 4 month holdup in getting the geotechnical work done, just based on not being able to get all the field work completed because we were limited in the data that was being collected. We did complete the borings on the west side of the river during this time, so we kind of continued as much work as we could through that time period. And then we did continue completing plan set work as well. So we got initial vertical and horizontal profiles set up, and we got many of the details started for the plan set. But we did stop ourselves at 60% awaiting that geotechnical report, just because if we move beyond 60% and there's a vertical pipe difference that has to be made due to the geotechnical properties under the river, then it would be a lot of rework to try and update that plan set at that point. We are continuing to work on the plan set. We just aren't submitting a 90% set to the MRGCD until we have all of that detailed design information. So I guess just for everyone's information, this is the current plan for the siphon alignment. Basically, we're planning to bore the siphon under the existing siphon with a minor offset. And the siphon will be extended about 50 feet on the west side of the river and about 250 feet on the east side of the river. For the actual construction process, the rig that will do the boring underneath the river would be set up on the west side of the river in the Corrales area. It would bore under the river through multiple passes to get to to the size required for the pipe hole. And then the pipe the pipe would be laid out on the east side of the river, would be welded together, and then it would be pulled back through that borehole to the west side of the river. And then the siphon would be fully installed, and we would complete surrounding work, which would include some channel regrading and outlet and inlet works around the pipes. Here is kind of a general video of the process for the horizontal boring, which hopefully works. The video hopefully works.
Horizontal directional drilling, commonly referred to as HDD, is a surface-to-surface installation technique that is comprised of 3 primary stages, including pilot bore, reaming, and product pipe installation. This method of construction is typically used to install pipelines in areas not amenable for open-cut construction, including major water bodies, wide or busy highways, railroads, environmentally sensitive areas, and urban environments. During construction, no disruption occurs to any feature being crossed by the HDD installation. With proper design and good HDD construction practices, the HDD method allows for the installation of pipelines with no impacts to the crossing features. Limited workspace is established on both sides of the crossing to house the necessary drilling equipment and to facilitate product pipe string fabrication. These sites are cleared and leveled to facilitate drilling operations. Silt fencing and other erosion control measures are placed around the site. If necessary, sound curtains are erected at the drilling sites for noise mitigation. The drill rig and power unit is placed into position on the drill alignment. A drill pipe skid is positioned next to the drill rig. A small entry pit, approximately 5 to 6 feet deep, is excavated at the front of the drill rig to collect drilling fluid returns. A separation plant, holding tanks, and drilling fluid pumps are set up and plumbed with the drill rig. A control cabin is placed immediately next to the drill rig. This cabin houses the controls used to control the drill rig and track the drill bit location. Drilling of the pilot bore commences by pushing and rotating drill pipe connected to the drill bit along a predetermined path from the drill rig entry location towards the exit side located on the far side of the crossing. A mixture of water and bentonite clay, referred to as drilling fluids, is continuously pumped through the drill pipe to the cutting tools where it mixes with the soil or bedrock cuttings. This mixture flows back to the drill rig location, carrying the entrained cuttings, where it is transferred to a separation plant to remove the cuttings and recycle the fluid component for reuse downhole. Aside from assisting in removal of cuttings, the drilling fluids also serve to stabilize the bore, cool the cutting tools, and lubricate the pipe string. As the pilot bore is advanced, a tracking system is used to locate the position and orientation of the drill bit. Steering adjustments are completed by the drill rig operator to maintain the design alignment. When the drill bit exits the ground surface on the far side of the crossing, the pilot bore stage of the installation process is complete. The pilot bore is typically enlarged by pulling reaming tools of successively larger diameter from the exit location back towards the drill rig location. Depending upon the diameter of the product pipe, multiple passes with reamers of increasing diameter may be required to incrementally enlarge the pilot bore to its final diameter. Upon completion of the full reaming passes, the condition of the HDD bore is assessed by completing what is known as a swab pass. The pass consists of pushing or pulling a slightly smaller diameter reamer through the fully reamed bore from start to finish. The diameter of the swab pass is typically smaller than the full reamed diameter, but greater than the diameter of the product pipe to be installed. Like the pilot bore drilling process, drilling fluids are continuously pumped through the drill pipe to the cutting tools, where it mixes and entrains the soil or bedrock cuttings into the fluid. This fluid aids in removal of the cuttings, continues to stabilize the bore, cool the cutting tools, and lubricates the pipe string. Sections of product pipe are transported and positioned at the HDD exit location. The pipe sections are then welded together to form a completed pipe string. Coatings are applied to welds and tests are completed to ensure proper coating application. The product pipe string is then pressure tested with water, drained, and placed on pipe rollers. Pipe rollers and cranes or side booms are used to assist the pullback process. The rollers and slings used in conjunction with the lifting equipment not only provide support for the fully fabricated pipe string, but also help reduce the amount of friction acting on the section of pipe above ground and reducing the overall amount of force required to pull the product pipe into the bore. The rollers and equipment are also used to position the product pipe to match the angle of the bore where the pipe enters the ground surface. Upon completion of the reaming process, and once the product pipe string is completely fabricated and welds X-rayed and coated, the final stage of the installation process, pullback, can begin. The pullback process consists of pulling the fabricated product pipe from the pipe entry location towards the drill rig. The HDD installation is complete when the product pipe reaches the drill rig location. Final checks and surveys are completed on the installed product pipe. With the completion of the pullback operations, the drilling equipment is demobilized and the work sites are restored to pre-existing conditions.
And now I'll hand it back to Jason to have some discussion on some of the coordination we've been going through.
That, remind me what the existing wood stave pipe diameter is and what is our replacement pipe?
So for folks online, the question that was asked is, Director Kelly for the MRGCD asked what the original diameter of the wood stave siphon is now and what the proposed diameter for the new siphon would be.
So currently the existing wood stave siphon was a 60-inch siphon. Based on some of the operational changes that have happened with MRGCD over the past 50 years or more, we've identified a new flow for the channel, and the current new siphon is planned to be a 36-inch steel pipe.
And that 36-inch steel pipe have their flow characteristics than a wooden siphon? Is it smoother and welded and?
Yes. Yes, it will. Oh, the question, for the folks online, the question was, will the new steel pipe have, better flow characteristics than the existing wood stave pipe? And the answer is yes, it will have better flow characteristics.
So we will get to a point in time where we'll just open this up to the floor, and anybody that has a question will be able to ask us a question. We'll have plenty of time left for that. So the topic of agency to agency coordination, I think most folks are aware that this siphon was installed and the heading of the siphon exists on the Sandia Pueblo. And the section of the river that the siphon goes through is also within the floodway on lands that the Pueblo of Sandia owns. And so when we originally applied for the Water Trust Board, this idea that MRGCD may or may not have the required easement to be able to cover the siphon was not really a question. So that's not something that we actually saw coming. So I think it was November of last year, I was noticed that the Bureau of Indian Affairs was reviewing the state of the easement that MRGCD maintains through the floodway of the Rio Grande, specifically through Sandia Pueblo. and related to specifically whether or not that floodway easement covers the siphon itself. I don't necessarily understand why they decided to raise this question, but nevertheless, they have raised this question and that they're reviewing it. So when we got word of that, that was also when we began to understand some of the delays that Luke was talking about related to access, that there were questions about whether or not that easement needed to be understood properly before we would be allowed to continue our technical work. There's some conversations back and forth. Ultimately, myself and the chair of the MRGCD and the vice chair of the MRGCD attended a tribal council meeting for Sandia Pueblo after the new year, at which time the Pueblo, not BIA, granted us access to continue at least doing our technical work. And so that's what's allowed the project to go forward now. The last update that I was given, and that was given to the 6 Middle Rio Grande Pueblo Coalition in, I believe it was last month, May of 2024, was that they're still working through this process, and we weren't given a timeline on how long it would take to satisfy BIA for this review. There is conversations, I think, at the federal government going on about whether or not this easement needs to be surveyed. Let me be clear, MRGCD believes we had the required easement. I believe, based on the documentation that we have submitted to the state and we have repeatedly submitted back to the federal government, that we believe the supplemental applications for our easements that reside on Sandia Pueblo fully cover this. Those documents and the letter approving our supplemental applications for the floodway easement was at the time signed by the Deputy Secretary of the Interior when that was done in the 1930s. So we as MRGCD do not believe that we were in error. Quite frankly, we thought our documents were so solid, this was kind of came out of the blue for us. So nonetheless, the MRGCD, myself, the board of directors, I do not control a federal process. I have to do a lot of listening. I have to do a lot of grinding my teeth. I have to do a lot of stamping my foot, talking about the impacts to communities. One of the biggest impacts for us, the MRGCD and you as a community, is the Water Trust Board funding is currently expires in November of 2025. You'll know that that was beyond the construction date that you saw, and we don't know if that's a real ending to the construction date. Part of that float that Luke was talking about is this is specialty construction. So if we can get this out to bid and we're allowed to progress forward, if a contractor can start right away, maybe it's not a year. Maybe it's less, but we don't know that. And so one of the biggest question marks for us is I can't take to the board a project of this magnitude with this amount of money, put it out to bid, and then not be able to give a notice to start to a contractor. So until we can really understand the nature of what BIA is doing related to this easement, even if we get to a biddable set, we can't put that on the street without identifying for a contractor the parameters by which they can start construction or can't start construction. That will definitely affect whatever price we get, right? If we're trying to say, well, we're good, but you got to wait for these amount of months and we don't know yet. That's just not the way business is done on large construction contracts like this. So what steps has MRGCD taken to try to alleviate what's going on? Obviously, there's been lots of communication back between staff and Sandia, staff and BIA. Most recently, there is a meeting being coordinated between the governor's office that will include myself, our chair, as we meet with Sandia Pueblo. I think there is, at least their communication to me is they're as frustrated about this as we are. This is they feel that based on the role that BIA serves as Indian trust to their lands, they can't really even authorize us to go forward with the construction project unless BIA is willing to say yes to that. So I'm trying to understand their limitations a little more, and that's what we're being given the opportunity to meet with them to try to understand their limitations. My hope is that once we understand those limitations, we can come to an agreement. And if we are agreeing on a path forward, if we begin to approach BIA, that both the Pueblo and MRGCD agree on a path forward, that will begin to move that needle a little bit. The politics, I think, get harder for a federal agency if us as MRGCD, BIA's contractor, mind you, that shouldn't go unnoted. We're not just any contractor. We are already contract to BIA to provide O&M services to facilities on Pueblos. Along with a Pueblo agreeing, our hope is if we can get to that point, then maybe that kind of speeds up the process, but I don't know. And I wish I could give you more. I wish I could give you certainty right now on where that sits. It's really hard to get this information out of the federal government. What I know right now is the federal government, BIA, has turned this over to what they call their solicitor's office. In the federal government, the word solicitor is the same as lawyers. So this has been turned over for them to review. And the length of time that takes is nobody will answer that question for me. Well, Jason, it's just going to take time. It's just going to take time. That's the answer. We have myself and the board, and we've been chasing down between the different contacts we have behind the scenes, checking up on this, getting what answers we can, and or even just bits of information. So I know that's not what this community wants to hear. Please know that at least within the things that MRGCD controls, we feel like we're checking those off and being as prepared as we can be and being judicious with the funding that we have. We will be applying for extensions of the Water Trust Board funding. I think we have every reasonable expectation to expect that will be extended based on just previous projects of this. This is a conversation that's not stopping. Contrary to popular belief, this project affects my every week. It exists there every week. There's some sort of conversation going on. It's hard to express that to you and let you see what that looks like. But I'm very much directed by the board of directors on this project. This project is specifically mentioned and how my performance as the CEO is evaluated at times, and the role and the proactiveness that I'm doing. So this touches me every day. I'm having conversations about this every day, doing what I can as the CEO and chief engineer to bring about hopefully a path to getting us into construction. So with that, it is prudent for me to say that the pumping operation that's going on, until I can tell you otherwise, my expectation is that pumping operation will continue for another year. And if it is, and if that changes in the positive direction, I will be able to say that. But I can't in good conscience leave this meeting and not tell you I believe that the siphon will be in place by 2025. So the expectation is that pumping operation will continue for at least one more year. So with that, I don't know if there's anything. I'm looking at my board of directors if they need to say anything before. I recognize I will probably have some questions. I will provide regular updates. My expectation is, my hope is I'll be able to meet with Sandia Pueblo before the end of this month. They've indicated they would like to have a meeting as soon as they can. They have their feast day coming up on the 15th, and they wanted to prioritize a meeting after that feast day because they've been preparing as a Pueblo for that day. So my expectation is I will be reporting on some sort of meeting with the Pueblo of Sandia to the board of directors in July. All the while, our contractor Wilson and Company will keep marching forward. We will be bringing those drawings to 100% and prepping like we're going to go to bid in the time frame that he stated up on the screen. So with that, I will pause. Is our other mic ready?
Hopefully.
So we're going to open it up for questions. I'm getting the other mic going just so that we are gracious to the folks online and they can hear the question.
Testing? Okay. Yeah,
Oh,
that would have pretty long.
When was it? Oh.
Okay, so if anybody has any questions, Amanda will walk around and please state your question into the mic. That way the folks online can hear it.
I have a question about Sandia Pueblo. Do they receive any benefit from this siphon at all? Or are they just the other side of the river from the siphon?
No, Sandia Pueblo actually has the largest, no, in terms of the siphon itself, no, not the siphon itself. The Corrales main canal originates on the Pueblo and the Pueblo irrigates off that, but no tribal land benefits once it goes into the siphon and comes to the west side of the river.
How long will the pumps be operating this year?
The pumps will operate so long as there's enough water in the river to keep them going. The way that those pumps work is I have to have a certain elevation of water in the river that allows us to suction that water out of the river and into the pumps. Last year, I ran them too long and broke both of them. Had to pay a fee to have them fixed. So there's a line on that tubing now that shows us when the water drops below that line, we are not allowed to run the contracted pumps because we don't maintain those pumps. We don't own them. We have a contract with a private entity that has come and set those out. And to stay in performance with our contract, we will have to shut them down when the water crosses that line.
You've outlined very well Plan A. Would you explain Plan B? If A doesn't go through because of BIA or whoever, do you have a Plan B? Is there anything else to be done other than using electrical pumps?
So the alternative analysis that was done, and that's available, that the folks can get that and see there's a wide range of alternatives chosen. One of those alternatives in particular is an actual permanent pump station. This would involve wet wells that were actually down into the ground that connect to shallow groundwater so they wouldn't be what you see there today. I mean, that's an option. It's expensive. It's more expensive than the gravity. But there are options that we can do. My understanding, talking with the folks, it's not if or when it's not if this gets figured out. It's the length of time it's taking to get figured out. And so I haven't heard anything from anybody saying, well, you need to start thinking about the siphon never coming back. It's what I'm getting from the federal government. We're doing our due diligence. We'll get through it as soon as we can, Jason. We'll get back to you. We understand this is important. Yes, sir.
I suspect that you guys took into consideration that last year we ran out of water in August and you probably made a bigger hole where the pumps were at. So the pumps will be sucking air like it did last year and you stop them.
So the depth down.
Yeah, depth.
So the depth was deep enough last year. What it is those pumps, you have to have enough water up the intake pipe. So when the water drops below a certain level on that intake pipe, the pump can no longer efficiently suck the water, what they call suction head, suck the water out of the river and then get it into the portion of the pump that lifts it and pushes it to you. So they were readjusted. The cages were readjusted. The one difference this year is the contractor has put an operational elevation along that pipe that when the river elevation drops below the operational elevation on that intake pipe, the pumps will have to shut off.
Okay, so if that was if where the pumps are at, if it was a lower elevation than what the existing elevation of the river was, if you would have made it lower, the water from the river would have gone to the pipes and the pipes would have continued to be sucking water without the river running out of water. Is that what I understand?
No, it's not. So think of the water level above the pipes. Making those pipes deeper isn't going to do any good. It's all the elevation of the river itself. The pipe length is the right length. It's the elevation of the water that is what matters. And as the river water drops lower, it'll pass a elevation along those pipes that the pumps will not operate. And we ran those pumps as long as we physically could last year to the point of them breaking. So
another question is, that 36-inch pipe that you're gonna be putting for the siphon there, is that enough pipe in there to supply? Because about 36 inches will probably just take one ditch at a time, right?
No, in this instance, it's a siphon design, that's generated by, elevation head on the upstream side and down. And what I mean by that is elevation of the water on the upstream side and the elevation of the ditch on the downstream side. There was no practical way, I think, to install a new 60-inch pipe with all the same volume. The hard truth is the amount of irrigation on the west side of this section of the river has, more than cut in half historically. So to be able to actually get a project on the ground for the amount of money that we had, we are putting the biggest pipe in we can. And that pipe will provide more water than the pumps currently provide now. So that was the target that we had. But the construction methods available to us in this scale of the river, if we were to try to do a 60-inch pipe, would have been astronomically more. That would have required open cutting the river itself, and all the environmental compliance. One of the things of the construction methods that you saw that weighed out in the alternative analysis is we really have almost no environmental impact by going into and cutting the river. This environmental impact, unfortunately, is real because this section of the river has 3 endangered species listed. It's the Rio Grande silvery minnow, the yellow-billed cuckoo, and the southwestern willow flycatcher. All this habitat along this section of the river is deemed critical habitat for those 3 species. So open cutting the river would have come with significant environmental penalties that would have added significant cost to the project.
Did I miss anybody on the side? No. Excuse me.
2 questions, one easy, one maybe not so easy. First question, what's the overall length of the pipe from east to west?
It's around 1,200 feet.
Okay. And the second question is our Secretary of the Interior engaged, and is she helpful in assisting us in this project?
What I understand is that leadership at the Department of Interior is aware. I don't know if that means Secretary Holland is personally aware of this. I know that both Senator Heinrich's office, Melanie Stansberry's office, and others have been briefed. There are questions being asked. What I understand is going on is the federal government is following a federal process that they have been followed before and they continue to follow. So I think there are ways to speed it up, hopefully, but they've initiated a process that they now have to continue. They have to finish. And so my hope is that we can speed them up by some of the things that you're talking about. And we are working behind the scenes. I don't know if folks know this, but MRGCD maintains federal lobbying services in Washington, D.C. I visit there to have these kind of conversations on behalf of the MRGCD and others. And so we are not sitting idle every stone that we're doing, writing letters, talking to anybody that we can. So.
Mr. Kasuga, got 2 questions also. Maybe one will be easier than the other. To date, do you feel that you're on budget? I know you have not bid this job, but are you going to be coming back to the public saying, we got to stop because we're not in budget? And could you tell us to date how much Wilson and Associates has been paid for the work done? And wait, and that's only the first question.
To date, we do feel we are on budget, potentially slightly below budget with the construction costs we've done so far. So there's your answer there. I don't know.
So I can't tell you exactly on that, but I can get it. We get monthly bills for that. So getting that answer to you should be relatively easy.
Can you explain to this group and myself why, if we had a perfected easement back from the 30s, why are we in the situation that we are today? And why isn't the MRGCD moving forward on the easement that they have without intervention of any other entity?
So if this land involved any other entity but a sovereign tribal nation, we would be. We would force them to stop us. We would say, here's our easement and we're gonna go do it. But on a sovereign tribal entity, that is not a reality. We would have to, if they shut gates on us, we would have to blow through their gates. We would have to tell their law enforcement to get out of our way. We would have to, and then we would likely be dealing with the investigative arm for the Pueblos for things like this. If laws are broken on there, is the FBI. And so it's just different. If we were in any other portion, if it was a government to private land, we would be exerting our right to the easement that we had. But in this instance, it's a governmental entity trying to exert a right for a piece of property on sovereign tribal land, who the tribal trust responsibility exists with the federal government, and they just carry a bigger stick than we do.
Martin, can I have your mic, please?
This one's not, that's.
In my flood control career, I worked for the Albuquerque Flood Control Authority. And they built the North Diversion Channel in the early 60s and acquired all the right-of-way for the North Diversion Channel for the Corps of Engineers to come in and build the channel with federal money. The downstream end of the North Diversion Channel goes out through Sandia Pueblo property. At the time, before the board thought they had all the easement they needed. And in the mid-70s, they went to a second round of negotiations with the Pueblo of Sandia and paid twice for that easement. I don't know the particulars of that because I was still in high school at that time. I also understand that P&M's easement for the transmission lines were renegotiated about 10 years ago. And the Pueblo's starting position was, what would it cost you to move that line off the Pueblo? So I have knowledge of two other actions regarding right-of-way where they took opportunity. I believe the P&M easement had a time limit to it. But I'm not sure where this is going to end up, but this is not without precedent with the Pueblo.
Yeah, I just think one of the things that we have to remember is it's a sovereign tribal nation. And I can't actually tell you honestly that the degree at which from my understanding, at least talking to the governor, he wishes this was done. He understands the frustration that's coming from the community here. Even talking to their staff, at least what's been communicated to me is they wish this process was over. What they communicate to me is they also call BIA on a weekly basis and go, are we done yet? And they don't actually just talk, they don't call the regional office, they call directly to the BIA right-of-way group that's working on this. So it is frustrating. I think in any other sense other than a sovereign tribal entity like this, liken it to another nation. Going into Mexico and just doing that, we can't. We would have to overcome so many other resources that is just not doable at all.
Thank you. A two-part question related. You indicated it would take 2 to 3 months to try to find a company that could do the drilling. Is there any reason why you can't start looking now to try to find that company? Number one. Number two, you said that the companies are difficult to find in New Mexico. Are you limited to a company from New Mexico? The video we saw before the council, I think the project was in Tennessee or something. So are you limited to New Mexico companies for the drilling?
So no, so I can't. So Wilson and Company can go and do research, and they have on companies in New Mexico and within just, I think, this regional area that do this. So I think we are confident that we are going to have people answer the bid. We can't go too much further down that path. It has to be a competitive bid process following the state procurement process that we have to do. So to the degree that research was done to know do we have capabilities in this state? And quite frankly, when it goes out, it'll be noticed, right? And if a company out of Arizona or California or something like that comes in and they're low bidder in their timeline, then that could be something that we move on. And quite frankly, if they're not low bidder, but their timeline is better, that is still, as long as it's within the context of the budget, that could still be things that we could take into account in the way that we award. It's just that getting that out there to them is really undoable until we know that we would be able to issue them a notice to proceed.
I have a question, with Sandia, as Jason mentioned, and I've been able to determine by speaking with the Pueblo and the environmental department, Sandia Pueblo, is the Pueblo is all behind getting this thing going. They're not obstructing the project. They say their primary problem is with the BIA. The local BIA evaluated this situation with the easement, and they sent it to the Solicitor General. And the BIA, I've tried to talk with the BIA specifically about this a couple of times, and the Bureau of Reclamation. Of course, they're not interested in talking to every citizen about this issue, but it looks like the real problem is in Washington with the Solicitor General. I don't think the Pueblo itself is in any way holding this up, and they'd like to see it happen. There's some issues here, though, about the easement that we don't understand, like why, like this fellow mentioned, if there was an easement there since the 30s, that seems to me that's good enough to justify the easement. Something's going on we don't understand, and we'd like to know more about that. And we'd like to see some pressure put on the Solicitor General to get moving on this. And, there's also the possible issue of some kind of environmental compliance study that might need to be done to put that pipe in. The actual borehole in the Siphon area has been subject to environmental study back years ago, archaeological and environmental study, but not that long alignment along the canal for the pipe layout. So if you have any more information on what's going on with the Solicitor General, and if you've had any conversations with them, or if you know anybody at the BIA or BOR that's working on this, appreciate it.
So I do know, and I have friends who work for the Solicitor's Office for the Department of Interior. I know they know about it. I know that there's conversations going on. I know that there have been questions about the type of what's actually being questioned. So that's my frustration. It is what's really frustrating to us as the MRGCD is we've actually gotten no public correspondence from BIA that this was even going on. We found out kind of through the grapevine, and then I got involved, and the first time I actually talked to a BIA representative about this is when I was attending a tribal council meeting. So something is weird is going on. I don't know what's going on there. I don't know why that's this path is being taken. So anyway, on that question. Now, related to environmental compliance, we feel like we're in a really good spot. We are not touching the flowable area of the river. We're going completely under it. This method has been used multiple times throughout and actually more than multiple, throughout our country to bypass sensitive environmental issues, so that we are not trenching through them, accessing them, doing those kinds of things. So the degree, and the federal government's actually used the same construction method to reduce their need for environmental compliance for projects as well, where this was relevant. So I don't have the same, and I've not heard the same issues from folks that I know at the Department of Interior, Bureau of Reclamation, folks like that I talked to, that this would be a problem. Because we're just bypassing everything that's a critical component from a biological standpoint. I know that there is work that Wilson's doing, kind of looking at the industry about this construction method. Obviously, you saw that there's fluids pumped down in there. It's come out. I do think there's requirements when that fluid comes back out with the millings, how it's treated, how it's reused, how it's disposed of, those kinds of things related to the pumping operation itself. But in terms of overall negative impact in terms of construction method, this is actually what makes this an appealing option because it reduces that.
Thank you. 2 weeks ago at a council meeting during a Corrales forum, a woman came up and spoke to the council about her tax exemption for her agricultural exemptions being impacted because she didn't get the water she needed last year, that she has a small acreage and she usually grows alfalfa. So she only could have 2 cuttings last year instead of 4, and that it impacted her taxes. Are you talking to the county at all or the state to help small farmers not get kind of dinged on their taxes because they can't produce as much because there's not enough water?
So I'm aware of an issue related to a farmer and irrigator who took who wasn't irrigating and was fallowing. But there is no process by which anybody, the state could come and sever your water right for something like this is going on with infrastructure being down. That's not a path for the state to come through. A farmer has to willingly set aside irrigation. In this instance, Valencia County is looking at their own ordinances related to fallowing. So there was a study that came out. A graduate student did a study that some of the counties are aware of where properties have gamed the system to get an agricultural exemption without actually being an agricultural entity. So the counties that I think Valencia County was looked at as part of that during the graduate study along with Bernalillo County. And I think that's part of what, from my understanding, when my staff has met with Valencia County, that was part of what they were reacting to. We know that goes on. So in terms of the siphon itself and water not being able to come from that, I think you would have MRGCD right at your table with you, defending the fact that a farmer is not going to be harmed in terms of their water right if they are if they are not irrigating because of a piece of infrastructure. Now, the degree at which MRGCD can affect a policy or a statute provided by a local government body, we're in those conversations. But I am aware of a person who took fallowing dollars, and the state is also aware of that. The state does not want farmers and or irrigators who fallow their fields. That is viewed as a beneficial use by the state, fallowing for compact delivery. So they would not want, and the state is not necessarily on board and with their fallowing program that they're funding to be viewed as negative from a county perspective. And that's based on conversations that I've had with the state engineer and the office of the state engineer himself, and the Interstate Stream Commission.
So it sounds like we're at least a couple years from having this thing up and running. In the interim, it also sounds like there is an issue with the elevation of the water in the river. Has MRGCD considered any sort of infrastructure to raise the level of the river, something similar to like what the Water Utility Authority does in raising the river to divert? Something similar where you're just creating, you're lessening that suction need on those pumps.
Again, anything I now do in the river, Andres, good question. I appreciate you asking that. Will invoke an environmental compliance review, right? So if I go now into there and say I would have put in some sort of rock apparatus or something like to raise the water surface elevation, I'm probably 12 to 18 months out on that just to be able to, one, design it. That won't take very long. 2, start running it down through the federal channels to get environmental compliance for that kind of structure. And they can just say no. Like right now, I have to do minnow monitoring. We have certain times if they see minnow pulses come down where I have to shut the pumps down, let the eggs flow by, turn the pumps back on. So we've thought about that. We've talked to federal agencies about that, doing doing that kind of work would be difficult right now. There's a lot of energy going on right now behind the scenes related to the 2016 biological opinion. For folks in the audience, the work that I do in drawing water out of the river is covered by what I call a biological opinion, and it's kind of transactional. For the water we take out, there's good things that we have to do. That biological opinion, MRGCD and the state of New Mexico, MRGCD, Fish and Wildlife Service, and the Bureau of Reclamation, a suit was filed by Walworth Guardians questioning the validity of our 2016 biological opinion. So that could just even be even longer than the process that we're in right now.
Okay. Have you guys considered lowering the elevation of the pumps?
So we've looked at that, talking with our federal partners. That section of that embankment was highly erosive up until the Bureau of Reclamation completed a project to bring in thousands of tons of really big rock. What you see that those pumps sit on is an embankment that's almost fully rock, well beyond where the pumps sit right now. There is a concern. If folks are aware, if you go out there right now, that embankment in the last spring runoff, not this year, but last year's moved 150 feet. And so anything we do that removes the rock that was put in there and trying to lower runs the risk of allowing that embankment to continue to move. The only section of the embankment that didn't move everything downstream of the pump station moved 150 feet in one spring runoff, because everything the pump station sits on is a huge rock section that is embedded back towards the levee. So unfortunately, I think the answer is no there too.
Okay. Well, with that profile, with the river profile dropping every year, that's just going to get more and more difficult to suck water out of that river.
Yes, I was the person who made the statement to the village council, and I just wanted to clarify. My concern is that I think everybody here is doing the best we can, and we have a lot of concerns and issues that are going to be complicated. I think it's obvious that Sandia really wants this to go through, but having worked with a project putting fiber in the ground to the Pueblos, we had to go through Army Corps of Engineers to just bring a fiber under the ground there because it was considered a navigable waterway. We're talking about a small arroyo on a Pueblo. So it gets very complicated there. But I was talking about our situation as farmers. And if we're going to continue to have our agricultural assessment, it's not based on whether we have a land conservation easement, which I have. I have to be able to produce receipts that I have been able to sell crops from my land, and I have to produce those to Sandoval County, or I don't get agricultural assessment. And it's within a 3-year period, and fallow doesn't count. So what I had asked the council was to revisit the state statutes on what qualifies as agricultural assessment, crumbling infrastructure, the lack of water delivery, and drought and climate change. Those things were written in 1978, and they need to be looked at again, and we need to be able to change them so it doesn't kill us as farmers if we can't produce what those agricultural standards are saying. We can't produce those anymore based on where we are now.
Yeah, so one of the things I think is so I think what will be useful is if MRGCD as a governmental entity and the village of Corrales get together and go talk to the county. So each individual assessment or each individual county tax break, if you will, for being ag is determined by county. So Bernalillo County has theirs. Valencia County has theirs. Sandoval County has theirs. There's, to my knowledge, they're county specific. So in my conversation and the staff that my conversation had, it was not somebody from the state pushing this down to Sandoval County looking at your property. It was the county assessor's office taking a look at your property. So I think us as governmental entities, MRGCD and the village coming together and approaching Sandoval County, I do think that we could get the backing of the state to come in and say, hey, this is an extraordinary issue going on for Corrales irrigators and also irrigators downstream. Well, folks in Bernalillo County, the rules are a little bit different for Bernalillo County. So yeah, I think that was the path forward. Based on what I understand, the meetings my staff had with Sandoval County. It's not something the state is doing. It's something the county assessor's office is looking at. Yeah, so for the folks online, the woman who asked the question said that she was told by Sandoval County that they were following state laws related to this, and so I do agree with her. I do think MRGCD and the village of Corrales should get together, and we'll get together and approach Sandoval County together.
So who's the company?
I was wanting to ask, can't you put like a well there where you pump the water? That way,
Half ago.
if the river drops, you can still pump water.
So the question, so you're asking if I can put a well in the
Yeah, then it wouldn't be affected by the water level in the river.
So the one, can you? Yeah. That's one of the alternatives that we looked at as far as the long term. The ability to get through that process to drill that well, and it's probably not going to be one, it's probably going to be multiple, to be able to set up and put enough pumps down into a well to pump out the volume. So you're drawing, we're drawing roughly between say 20 and 35 cubic feet per second. I believe 40 cubic feet per second is somewhere between almost 20,000 gallons a minute. The types of pumps that you're talking about are really big. We actually built a permanent pump station in Socorro, and we weren't able to put those in the ground in a well status. It had to be something that they were above ground. We created a pool from a drain and pumped them that way. It's just, that's a lot of water to be drawing from a well to make that work. So
what about a submergible just put in the river? You can put a big submergible.
Again, those types of pumps are on the order of 1 CFS or less for what we're talking about. It's just a lot smaller.
And you're gonna do the siphon, and we're gonna get enough water, more water than we had before, so we'll have better head pressure.
I think when the siphon's done, it will be it will provide more water than the pumps are providing now, and it'll be gravity again. It will be
but will we get more than we were before?
No, you won't get more than you got before. You'll get the amount of water proportionate to the acreage of Corrales.
Okay.
How, pardon my ignorance, but how old is the old siphon?
So the old siphon was constructed as part of the original works of the district. So I think construction began in 1930. And so like I don't remember the exact date it was complete, but it's old.
Was there any thought about utilizing the old siphon to run a pipe through that? I mean, that just seems simplistic.
That was an alternative that was looked at. And again, just the ability to pull something through there reliably without taking it apart. Also, that siphon now is the only barrier to keeping the river from dropping is just at the flowing section of the river. That rock dike, we were not allowed to continue that rock dike all the way across the floodplain. So there are sections of this siphon that are open to air, and you can just walk in and just fall into it. So it has to go deeper. It's all flagged off on the Sandia side. It has to go deeper for it to operate. It's a safety hazard.
Jason.
Yes, sir.
Once the pumps are turned off because of the lack of water in the river, if we get lots of rain and the flow comes up higher, will they be turned back on again?
As long as those water rises above the elevation for the pumps to operate, we'll run them until it drops below them again. Yes.
That was actually a nice segue into my question, and thank you for holding this meeting, and thank you for everybody being here as well. It's felt to me like after the pumps got shut off in August, we saw compact delivery water going down the river that felt to me like the river level went back up enough to maybe turn those pumps back on. So if we have that situation again, or can we see the pumps come back on? But perhaps is there a way to coordinate that delivery? I know that's federal government again, but is there, and state, et cetera, is there a way to maybe look into that as well?
So unfortunately not. The water that moved last year during that time period was water stored by the Army Corps of Engineers and flagged as flood storage. So under the Rio Grande Compact, that water either has to be vacated by the end of June if they store it, or it has to be held until the end of irrigation season for the exact purpose of that, to prevent irrigators from accessing it. The Rio Grande Compact looks at that water and says that water should have moved through during spring runoff and should no longer be available to farmers after that. And so the Texas would have would take a position that that is a violation of the Rio Grande Compact.
Do you know what the latest is on El Vado Dam?
Yes, I do. So honestly, the siphon, as bad as it is not the worst news I'm about to give you tonight. Yeah, anybody else want this job? So the federal government presented 2 meetings ago at MRGC's board meeting that the current alternative they chose to rehabilitate El Vado Dam is no longer viable, and that they will be buttoning up the site and making it safe and returning to the drawing board, if you will. So construction will be delayed from either a year to 3 years. Don't know the time frame yet, while they get back into a process to choose a new alternative. And then I expect the time for construction is the same time. So this project was going to take 5 years to construct, and they're going to start over. So if they take 2 years to get it figured out and then 5 years worth of construction, we're probably 7 years out. They may not enjoy me saying that, but based on my experience, we have a while. Here's the difference though, the light at the end of the tunnel. And I think something significant happened through reclamation's process here. The federal law changed. So in 2020, what we call WRDA, 2020 actually authorized native storage and abaque. So WRDA is the federal funding legislation that authorizes projects for the Corps of Engineering, can change things for them. So that legislation authorized native storage within abaque. It's taken 4 years, but native storage in abaque is not available until the Army Corps of Engineers updates what they call their water control manual. That water control manual got signed with an update in February or March of this year. So the option to store water in abaque is available. But just like everything else, that space is already taken by somebody. The Albuquerque-Bernalillo County Water Utility Authority owns the vast majority of conservation storage. So when I say conservation storage, native water as well, owns that space to store. Take that back. Conservation storage just means the physical space, storing water there. Now that dam is authorized for San Juan Chama water, which is the type of water ABCWA stores, and native water, the type of water we store. So we are currently in a negotiation. The El Vado is the Bureau of Reclamation's problem. So they're leading the negotiations between ABCWA and MRGCD about storing native water in abaque. I will say that's going well. That is also not an if, it's a when. And so I believe that hopefully we'll have an agreement crafted where native water can be stored in abaque before the end of this calendar year. Is my expectation. So if the state can move into a better spot related to the Rio Grande Compact, I do believe we will have physical space in a significant quantity. I can't tell you a number right now, sorry, but in a significant quantity available to the Middle Valley. And so my hope is that a significant quantity that would let us resume similar operations that we had at Ovado while the construction's going on. Maybe I thread the needle close enough there. I think I had a question here. So good news on that end. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I just had a question. What's the date it's gonna be shut off the pumps this year? I know it got hotter sooner. So I don't know if that runoff is really roaring now, or what are you estimating, what date?
So a specific date, I don't know. I'm hoping that we get through most of June, all of June. If you look at the July into most of June, maybe we're into the middle of June. No. If you look at the hydrograph, unfortunately, the hydrograph is tumbling, folks. We'll be releasing San Juan Chama in the not too distant future that will prop up those river flows, but I expect it's going to be dropping. My hope is that the rate at which it drops, we get through a significant portion of July. You put me on the spot. So if I promise something here today, you're going to say, well, you said at this meeting that it was going to stay on till then. So I'm going to edge on more bad news. And then if it extends longer, we'll be happier. So it's just it's really hot now, as you pointed out. That hydrograph is tumbling. And so we'll run them as long as we can. And if it rains and produces a water surface elevation for those pumps to operate, we'll operate as long as we can keep them going. And then Amanda, you have somebody here again.
I haven't heard how long we expect this new solution to last. The last one was 94 years or 96 years, close to 100. Any estimate on the life of this new?
Yeah, so I actually think the current siphon would still be working if it didn't get exposed to air. That started introducing air and allowed it to start rotting. So my expectation is if when we put this new siphon in the ground, if it's not exposed to air, you'll probably get close to the same amount of performance time, if not more, from it. The old siphon's a wood stave siphon. I think folks know that. And so as the river dropped and you had top sections of the siphon now exposed to the air, my belief and what I think we can see is rotting started. Which started to destabilize some of the staves and had them start dropping in.
Assuming everything goes well and the new siphon goes in, will that be dependent on river levels as well?
No, the nice part about the construction method is they'll be able to construct regardless of what's going on in the river. We're going to drill completely underneath it. So when they get going, they'll be able to keep going, and the river level shouldn't impact the construction method once it gets up and running. They're going to be deep. Luke, how deep are you guys looking versus where the river is now?
40 to 50 feet.
The new pipe will be 40 to 50 feet lower than the current bottom of the siphon.
Yeah, I for one would like to thank you for getting me as much water as you've got me. I'm not big. I don't have a large piece of property, but for what I do have, I am really grateful for the Middle Rio Grande Conservancy District working as hard as they have to make sure I get what I get. Thanks.
So please tell Bobby thank you. That young man runs this system and he is out keeping those pumps going. I appreciate the thank you. I will pass that on. I'm doing the administrative job, but Bobby Wagner's doing the hard job. Thank that young man because that's why you're getting your one.
Jason, could I wrap up a few things? Yeah, after questions.
All right, I'm gonna be a bearer of some bad news. I went to Abbey Q Lake, which I fish every year, a whole bunch. This is the lowest I've ever seen Abbey Q Lake, and the water is just pouring out.
So I will say this, I'll offer this. If MRGCD gets conservation storage space there, ABCWA is probably moving their water to Heron. So you're going to see Abbey Q go like this. What you're seeing right now, there is some O&M work that required some vacation of water. ahead of time. And so I do think you'll see Abiquiu come up. MRGC is moving some of our San Juan Chama water down. No, we're not. Never mind. We're using some of ABCWA's water, and potentially we'll be working on exchanging our water with theirs in Heron. So while what comes with the conservation storage and operating a dam like that, El Vado is a very up and down dam because you put water in it and that water's meant to leave. If we start storing water there again, you'll see that water level rise and fall on a pretty annual basis until we get El Vado back.
What is the chance of an early warning of us getting, say, you're going to shut it down next week, that we could get one more water in instead of it just cutting off? That's one question.
I think we can do, that's one thing I think that we've been talking about behind the scenes. We are tracking the hydrograph. So to a point, it's an inexact science. Myself, or sorry, MRGCD with our water management staff, and Markin, Casey-ish in the corner, Matt, we work with federal agencies. And so we take a look at that, and we do, I think we get it right. And so last year we got it wrong. We thought we had a little bit more time, and we also didn't understand the pump. So I do think as we see this fall, we will be, and now we know this exact elevation because of that, we will be out ahead of that going, it's coming, don't turn it down, take the water. So I do think that we will be able to be more proactive. If you don't take it now, you may not see it again next week. So when we get to that point, you may hear Bobby start giving you that kind of language.
Yeah, that, because I think a lot of people here in Corrales would to really appreciate that, saying it might be shut off next week. You got to water this week. You can't take vacation or something.
Yeah. So my suggestion to you right now is I'm getting ready to transfer large sections of this valley to a rotation in all sections as the river drops. If I were irrigators in Corrales, I wouldn't say no ever. When it's your time right now, take it. And do not bank on it being there in any given week. Because again, it is a mechanical solution. Right now, we had some hiccups with the pumps at the beginning, but they've been largely reliable through the most of the season right now. But those pumps could go down for mechanical reasons too, that mess things up. So if you have the opportunity to irrigate, take your opportunity. And that's the best advice I could give you right now.
And just, another thing, the dealing with Bobby has been great. I'm brand new to Corrales the past 2 years for Loving Thunder for therapy horses, and our fields there, we want to keep it original to Corrales. We don't want to build homes on the land, but he's been very patient with me because nobody knows how to irrigate with an electric pump down here. So I just want to say Bobby's been very patient with me. And for Sandia Pueblo, we should thank them for still talking to us, and please continue to talk to us, to Sandia Pueblo, to help out everyone.
Question, ma'am.
You just mentioned some alterations to how we're going to be receiving water in the future, based on our continued drought conditions and the lack of water itself, not just our pumping problems. Does MRGCD have some near and longer term plans about how you're going to handle those?
Yeah. So honestly, from what I can see, MRGCD as an organization up and down the river has suffered the most because we've lost our ability to store. Droughts are nothing new. This is a big one, but our system was not built like the Colorado River. The Rio Grande has always been a feast or famine river. We did not build, at least upstream of Elephant Butte, our dams to hold water for years and years and years worth of water. We are typically an entity that uses the water that we have, and then we supplement it a little bit. So it's not a coincidence that you saw river drying through Albuquerque for the first time in 40 years, and that was the first year El Vado wasn't available. So are things going to be tighter? Yes, but I do believe last year I would have been able to store water if I had a physical space. I believe this year we could have stored water if we had a physical space. If I could have stored even last year 30,000 acre feet, which is a drop in the bucket for El Vado. El Vado can hold 196,000 acre feet. If I could have stored 30,000 acre feet, last year would have been a different year for the vast majority of the valley, and probably would have been a different year for Corrales too, because I would have been able to keep more water in the river longer. And that's using native water before I use San Juan Chama, right? And so I had 20,000 acre feet of San Juan Chama. You add something like 20,000 or 30,000 acre feet of native storage to that. That just goes a long way. So our plan right now is we feel like we're in some of the worst that we've seen because we've lost that critical tool. We believe agriculture is a conservation measure for this river. This river thrives because we divert water, we put it out at critical locations for habitat. So we think that future is bright. Yes, ag is going to drop in the acreage, but I don't believe agriculture is ever going to go away in the Middle Valley. And so we're planning on that future. That's why we're investing. That bill that Reclamation is working on, that comes with an expectation that MRGCD pays 15% of that cost. So 15% of lots of millions is lots of millions. And so MRGCD's board is signing up. We've signed that repayment agreement, so we're committed to that. And so I think those are some of the things that we're doing. I would love to connect you with Casey Ish in our office. He's doing some really great things with some on-farm efficiency that is reducing irrigation times. He just completed a project last year where a farmer in Valencia County was, I think, taking 16 hours or more to irrigate 3.5 acres, and they irrigate that same acreage now, and I think just under 2.5 hours with the programs that he's been working with and trying to bring funding to farmers. So there's a lot of things that we are doing. We'll take good feedback on how we can get those messages out to you, but we're not sitting here idle. We're trying to do the best that we can to protect those who want to farm in this Middle Valley well into the future.
So Jason, as one of the board members listening to this, and we listen carefully at every board meeting, and I see we got some things to do here based on ongoing discussions. And number one is we need to take another look at our current pump system and evaluate it. Can we get a wet well in the river? Can we lower them? I know you have looked at this. Could we put some additional pumps in upstream of the riprap mat? Because we're looking at the rest of the 2024 season in 2025. So we got a whole bunch of smart people working for the MRGCD and good consulting engineers. So I'm going to ask Jason to take another look at that. I'm also going to ask the other board members to do whatever's reasonable to come to terms with the Pueblo of Sandia. And we've got a good relationship with all 6 Pueblos. And I think, like Jason said earlier, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So let's talk about this matter of when. Jason, I think we should consider an incentive in our Siphon contractor's contract to where if he and I'm assuming we're going to go to bid in September and start working in October, and you know, an $8 million project's going to get a whole lot of attention, including from Albuquerque Underground, the biggest utility contractor in New Mexico, who just did a bore for us under Tribal Road 47 on Isleta Pueblo, where the drain pipe that had been fixed too many times just gave up. But I'd like to put an incentive in that contract to where he gets a big chunk of change if the pipe goes into operation on March 1st, 2025. The DOT did that with the big I job to ensure it was done in a timely manner. I don't know how big that incentive would be, but if it kept us from having to pump water all summer long, there's a number to start with, and maybe that incentive would decline a little bit if he had us done by April or May. And maybe I've just got a pipe dream here and it's not an effective way to accelerate the project. But I see Dan Aguirre over there, and as a senior principal at Wilson and Company, he's dealt with contracts that's had incentives in them to move things through. So we have some other opportunities that we haven't quite put into it. So, but as Jason said, this was on his evaluation, and we try not to put projects on his evaluation because things aren't in his control. But this is an extremely important project. We had some discussions at the board level, questions from a board member. Well, if this pump station's working so good, why don't we just go with the pump station right there? And I answered on that one is keeping the siphon or rebuilding the siphon keeps everybody in Corrales in parity with the point of diversion up at the Angostura diversion dam. That stretch of the river's wet all summer long. And if we tried to move the diversion point down here, we'd be back to running out of water when the river dropped. So to keep you guys at your long-standing point of diversion on the Rio Grande that and equal to Sandia Pueblo and Santa Ana Pueblo, we need to rebuild that siphon and keep everybody drawn off the river at one of the 4 diversion weirs we have across the Rio Grande, those being Cochiti Dam now is one of them, Angostura, the Isleta Diversion Dam, and then Santa Casia. So. And thanks for coming out. We will all stick around if there's follow-up questions and other ideas. And I gotta say, I wrote down 25 questions, and Martin, I didn't include your 5-part question as one of those. But I've made notes here, and I'm going to ask Jason to perhaps flesh this out a little better and put it on our website as questions and answers that we responded to tonight.
Thank you, John. That's what we'll be doing through actually all of our farmers meetings as well. When we get into the Sandoval County, Bernalillo County, Valencia County, Socorro County, is we'll be looking for FAQs that come out of that with consistency of questions. We'll develop an FAQ specifically related to Corrales siphon. That way, if folks come up and you said, "Hey, I think I remember that," we'll get something posted on the website. You may even see Amanda post that out through social media. So if you're signed up on our Facebook page or Instagram or those kinds of things, she also posts this kind of stuff out to our social media. So I appreciate, I know that this is very important to you as a community. Please know that. I feel you, I hear you. I think the board does too. We will keep working on it diligently. And we'll be back with another update, hopefully. And please stay tuned to the July meeting, because I do hope I'm able to report about meetings with the Pueblo of Sandia that I'm hoping that those will happen later here in June.
Good job.